This walk will cross the modern Barbican area and will get us from Barbican Station to Moorgate Station, following this route. Since these historical maps have been geo-referenced, I'm able to superimpose the exact route I took onto older maps. Here it is superimposed on a 1950s map, dating from immediately after the Second World War. And here it's superimposed on a 1900s map, showing what was beneath the modern route. Before we concentrate on comparing the modern map to the 1900 map, it's worth lingering on the state of the City of London immediately after the Second World War. The streetscape is completely devastated. Indeed, in photos, it looked like this. The new Barbican didn't happen because modern planners went wild. It replaced nothing but rubble. On the walk, I'll start at Barbican Station, and as we get to particular points along the route, I'll pause the action and we'll take a look at the streets beneath. It's quite a long way up from the station up to the system of high walks, and I'll explain that. So the estate was designed to be walkable from end to end, crossing no roads at all, and to do this, streets like Aldersgate Street below here needed pedestrian bridges above them, and the pedestrian bridges needed to be high enough to clear a London double-decker bus running underneath. So hence the level of high walks on the Barbican Estate. It's quite high up compared with the surrounding streets, but it does mean that everywhere is indeed walkable. Residents need to be quite fit if they wish to leave the Barbican Estate and enter the real world. This walkway crosses Beach Street, and it's time for the first bit of history. Before Barbican Station got a new name in 1968, the station was called Aldersgate, after the Gate of London which stood here. The word Barbican was quite an obscure reference back then. There was a road called Barbican before it was renamed Beach Street, and this road had the name Barbican since it ran beside the Roman-era Barbican. The principal fort of Roman London was erected between 90 and 120 AD at the current junction of London Wall and Aldersgate Street. The term Barbican derives from the Latin barbicana, referring to a fortified outpost used for defensive purposes. In this instance, a Roman watchtower, or specula, stood north of the fort, on the north side of the street formerly called Barbican. This structure was later integrated into the fortifications north of the London Wall. When the new Barbican estate was built and obliterated most of the nearby street layout, the estate needed a name, and Barbican was chosen. And the street that had been called Barbican received the name Beach Street to avoid future confusion. We can walk along the line of the former street called Barbican, which we mentioned earlier, up here on the first of the high walks. The Roman Barbican would have been dead ahead here. But Next we'll hang a right into the bowels of Depot House. Like many of the Barbican residential buildings, this has got a literary name. As we turn left at the bottom of these stairs, we're on the site of the former Australian Avenue. This was built in the 1890s, which explains its more modern street name. I don't have any photos of Australian Avenue, but it led south to Dewin Crescent, which was obliterated during the Blitz. And it was called Dewin Crescent because it was the site of the first London Jewish cemetery. At primary school, some of us would have sang "There is a green hill far away without a city wall." This location directly outside the Christian city meant that a non-Christian cemetery could be placed here. And Dewin Crescent marks the site of what was the only permitted Jewish cemetery in England. Following the expulsion of Jews from England in 1290, Edward I granted the cemetery site to Master William de Montfort, who was Dean of St Paul's, and it was long built over by the time Dewin Crescent was built. The Barbican Center itself was constructed between 1965 and 1976, and occupies a 35-acre site. But before any building was done, it was decided to straighten out a bend in the Metropolitan and Circle Line tracks of the Underground. When the Metropolitan Railway was expanded from Farringdon to Moorgate in December 1865, the tracks had to avoid the Whitecross Street prison, which was here at the time and in the way. The new tracks had to skirt the prison's northern wall, and this caused a kink in the route. And the first act of the creation of the Barbican Estate was the realignment of 500 metres of the Metropolitan line between Barbican and Moorgate stations between 1963 and 1965. Demonstrating how this area was effectively a blank slate, the Thomas More Garden here, the largest open space in the Barbican complex, and it's over this wall. And already I showed a photo of all the destruction. This photo was taken from the future Thomas More Garden and looks northeast across it. We walk down into Lakeside Terrace, and this walkway is also above the railway tracks, and it runs in the same direction directly underneath all these fountains. We're on the former location of Bradford Avenue, which was a short road full of warehouses, and again I don't have a photo. And next we'd have been traversing Red Cross Street before the war. It probably didn't look like this, but let's pretend it did. Red Cross Street once ran to the junction of Beat Street and Golden Lane, and there actually was a Red Cross here, located at St Giles Cripplegate Church. We can hang a left here into the Barbican Center. This was designed in the Brutalist style and was voted London's ugliest building in a 2003 poll. But it's much loved as a concert venue by most Londoners, and it's also too dark for me to film in. The Midland Railway Cripplegate Depot was built on the former site of Whitecross Street Prison, and the Barbican Center was built on the former site of the Cripplegate Depot. The Debtors Act of 1869 finally ended debtors' prisons, and the Metropolitan Railway built the Cripplegate Depot between Aldersgate and Moorgate stations on the former site of the prison. The depot was taken over by the Midland Railway and lasted until after the Second World War as just about the only building to survive the Blitz hereabouts. Over there is St Giles Without Cripplegate Church, which survived the redevelopment, and there's the City of London School for Girls to its right. Now Gilbert Bridge here follows the original line of Whitecross Street. City Greenyard, which was here, provided married quarters for the City of London Police, and until 1883 it had been the Lord Mayor's stables. The Barbican Estate was not social housing, but largely aimed at affluent city professionals and their families. To attract tenants, promotional materials were created, portraying the Barbican Estate as ideal residence for well-to-do professionals and international business people. The Corporation of London, who owned it, let all flats at commercial rents. Right here we'd be crossing Elephant Yard, and Elephant Yard was the coaching yard which used to belong to the Elephant Inn, but that was demolished as early as the 1840s. Andrews Highwalk is named for Lancelot Andrews, who was the rector of the St Giles Without Cripplegate Church. So, delving back into history, Milton Street was once directly beneath us here. Fore Street derived its name from its position outside the London city walls. The street flourished as a shopping destination until the mid-Victorian period. St Alphage Highwalk passes the site of the former church of St Alphage, which was beside the old London Wall. St Alphage, the saint, died in 1012 and he was the Archbishop of Canterbury, and Greenwich was the site of his unfortunate martyrdom when he refused to impoverish his tenants. To ransom himself from the Danes, he was brought into the Danish assembly and pelted with animal bones, unfortunately to his eventual death. It would be impossible to do justice to the story of why this particular street is called London Wall. It's a whole video by itself. But the alignment I'm walking along was not the original course of the street. Again, this was a Barbican redesign. And we're coming up to Moorgate station, and the street Moorfields here gets its name from an open space located adjacent to the northern wall of the City of London. And here we are. The next video in this playlist is Moorgate to Liverpool Street, and there'll be much more history there. But for the meanwhile, I wish you goodbye.